What's going on, everyone? Today I got two TV shows to review, sort of mini series that they did a little while ago. We're going to be talking about two superhero ones, one that I find a lot more enjoyable than the other one. So let's just jump into that. So the first one that I want to get into is the one that I kind of found a little disappointing in some parts, and I feel like that's the more popular one of the two, is Moon Knight. It was a Disney Plus series that came out, and it tells the story of Stephen Grant, who over the past couple of days has been experiencing episodes of blacking out, and he doesn't know what's exactly happening until he realizes that he's sharing a body with another person that's also being shared by an Egyptian god. Now, for starters, I really digged Oscar Isaac's performance for the most part in the series. I will say, as a slight, sort of nitpick for me for his performance was, I thought that the accent that he had for the British version of himself with Stephen Grant wasn't always there. It kind of felt annoying at times for me, but that doesn't take away from his overall performance in the show. I think that Mark Spector was a really interesting character as well that he portrays in the same body. I thought that that was really cool to see. And outside of that, I thought that a lot of the stuff in this show, outside of those two characters and Oscar Isaac kind of meshing between the two, felt a little flat at times. The main villain in this story is played by Ethan Hawke, who's Arthur Harrow, and I will say he was fine in the show. There were points and times where I thought that he did portray the villain aspect very well, and I thought it was presented very well. And then there were other times where I watched the show and I was kind of like, I think we're losing focus a little bit here as far as what the villain is trying to do and how he's trying to do these things. I just didn't think that the villain aspect of the show was as compelling as other parts of it. I thought that a lot of the side characters that they tried to introduce, or they did introduce, wasn't for me. It just kind of felt like it's just more characters added to the show that didn't probably really need to be there. And honestly, one of the other parts of the series that I thought just kind of surprised me on how, uninspired it was some of the action. Because we've come to the point now with Disney where we expect certain levels of things in the shows and in the TV series, such as like CGI and, storytelling could be one of them, but it's always a hit or miss depending on who's writing it. But also the action too, like the fight scenes that they have. And there's only really one fight scene in the entire series, and it's at the very end when Stephen Grant's version of the Khonshu, or the whatever the god that they're trying to portray in the show, where he's wearing the suit version of it rather than the whole actual armored version of himself. That was a cool fight at the end, and they really started to get some stuff going with that direction. But it's also the last episode of the series, and I thought that, for me, I expected way better action than what they had given outside of that one scene. But what I will say was an amazing aspect of the series was episode 5. Really, the tail end of episode 4 going into the beginning of episode 6 was great stuff. Stephen Grant ends up getting shot, so now the two characters are kind of meshed into this world where it's the afterlife, it seems like, where it's all white backdrops and it's all these characters, and he's going to talk to the villain that's supposed to be portraying as a psychiatrist, and there's a big self-discovery thing in these episodes where Mark Spector and Stephen Grant are going through each other's lives, and then you suddenly realize at one point that Stephen Grant isn't a separate entity. He was something that Mark Spector created for himself, which I found to be really compelling. The episode 5 was just amazing character work from a writing perspective and from an acting perspective from Oscar Isaac. Stuff was really good and really compelling. I just wish, however, that we had a little bit more time with that. Now, it may seem that my complaint about it may be, not as popular as the rest because everyone feels the same way, but this series would have absolutely had benefited if they would have added a couple of more episodes, added a little bit more time to a lot of the episodes that they had, because at the end of the series, it kind of felt like there was a lot more left to be desired. There was a lot more left to want to see, and I have no doubt in my mind that I think Oscar Isaac as these characters can do really well going forward in the MCU and what they can possibly do with him. I just think for his debut show, it was overall fine. I wouldn't think this is the worst MCU show that they've done. I think the Captain America, the Bucky, whatever fucking show that was that they tried to do right after WandaVision, that takes the cake as far as the shittiest show that they've done so far. It's not in that realm. I don't really know how I would rank it amongst most of the shows. It's not better than Loki, that's for sure. I think Loki is a far better show than that one does, but it's definitely not one of the worst ones that they've done. I'm going to give Moon Knight 3 stars. The next series that I think is a lot better, actually, in a lot of instances than the Moon Knight show, and it's crazy because it's coming from DC, no less, and we all know their track record. Peacemaker is fucking awesome. John Cena reprises his role as the Peacemaker, and last time we saw him, he was in The Suicide Squad, not the other Suicide Squad. It's The Suicide Squad. He was in that movie. He got into a fight with Bloodsport. He had a building fall on top of him, and now he is recovering from his injuries from that, recovers from it, and then he goes home, and then he realizes that he's still stuck in this web of working with the Black Ops to get towards his freedom still. And I really dug the show. I thought the show was hilarious going through, and that was another thing that I did mention with the Marvel show, is I did think that some of the comedy landed, and then obviously some Marvel humor didn't land, but for me, I thought a lot more of the humor landed for Peacemaker than it did for that show. John Cena has really turned the corner as an actor, especially with this character, and I think that's a testament to how James Gunn directs, and I think that's his writing style, and I think it's something that John Cena could really, you know, sink his teeth into, because we saw him in the Bumblebee movie, and he wasn't really that great in the Bumblebee movie, but he's also playing like a stern, you know, soldier thing, so how much charisma can you really have with that isn't just like, hey, I need you to kind of just look at the girl and go, you can't do that, and then that's your line. Whereas with Peacemaker, he's allowed to be a lot more creative, he's allowed to be a lot more fun, he's allowed to be more loose, and I think it's great. In the series, they have to fight off against a bunch of things called butterflies, and butterflies are similar to the starfish that they fought in the previous movie, where instead of like actually wrapping around their heads though, the butterfly creatures will go inside one's body, basically killing them from the inside and then taking over their mind, having, you know, records of their history, and while also being like more robotic in the presentation of the characters that they're playing as. And I thought at first that the concept was a little stretched, and, you know, it was a little like, okay, how exactly are they going to spin this? And then by the end of the show, they kind of blow it up into this like mega huge thing, which I didn't expect, and I'm a little iffy on how much I really do like it. But I thought for how James Gunn directed it and how James wanted to present it, I thought it really worked. Because you see John Cena as Peacemaker is over the top. It is an exaggerated thing. He dances around almost butt-ass naked after screwing a girl in a scene singing, you know, some glam rock, which is amazing to watch. So, like, to go even further in the realm of, like, we need to up the stakes and make it this huge thing, it didn't feel out of place at times. While I do think that John Cena's performance as the Peacemaker was very great, I also think that Freddie Stroma, who plays Vigilante, which is his friend, just steals the show in a lot of instances. This guy is hilarious. He plays off of John Cena's character very well. Again, James Gunn writing the material for these guys, and the comedy that they have is pretty good. Honestly, he's one of the better characters in the show that isn't just Peacemaker. And then we get to the team. The team is kind of a mix-up of the people that we saw from the previous movie, and while a lot of them are pretty okay, some of them do feel a little interchangeable as far as like what you can do with them. They tried to add a couple of things to the show with some of the side characters to make them more interesting. They had one character who was the daughter of Amanda Waller be in the team and to kind of oversee things and make sure everything goes according to plan. There was also an interesting aspect to where they had a character who was taken over by a butterfly, and instead of being labeled as like the bad version of it, where like he's trying to infiltrate the team and just, you know, reduce it from there, he's actually a butterfly that wants to help the team because he's realizing that the other ones are trying to destroy the world when he first initially came to this planet to kind of just live amongst the humans and have a good life. Circling back to Peacemaker's side of the story, which makes the story actually even more compelling in a sense because now he has even more subtle subplot that he has to deal with, is he has to deal with his dad and the amount of trauma that he's dealing with from his brother and how he was raised to leading up to the moments now. And I thought that it pays off really well with him in the end of the show. I think the direction of the show is actually pretty good too, along with all the directors, not just James Gunn, that did it, because everyone knew kind of the style that they wanted to go with the series. So James Gunn did have a good amount of people in there that knew what they were supposed to be doing with the character. I thought that at the end of the series, I was very satisfied and wanted more, but understood that this chapter of the series is kind of closed. So definitely looking forward to more stuff from Peacemaker, but in the end, I feel satisfied with the stuff that they had given us from this show. And it's not very often that DC gets a lot of things right, especially when they do their whole cinematic universe that they're trying to do. So we'll give them their flowers when they deserve it. They deserved it with the Batman over there, although it's not really attached to it, but we have to give them their flowers regardless because it's a great movie. And we also have to give them their flowers for Peacemaker. I would love to see more stuff like this from them. The Suicide Squad seems like a great sort of launching point for them finally to kind of get them back on track after all the crazy stuff that's happened with, you know, Superman, Batman, Aquaman's movie, you know, all that sort of stuff. This feels like a pretty good place to kind of start being like, all right, we're going to get a groove back on. So major props to DC. You made a pretty good product. I'm going to give the Peacemaker show 4 stars. Again, this feels a little shorter than what I've wanted to, and some of the ideas that I had a little bit scattered, and I do apologize for that. But I did end up not taking notes on this, and I just kind of wanted to get it out there. So these are my thoughts on the shows. Overall, I liked both of them. I like Peacemaker exponentially more, though, and both shows, I want more stuff from them. One, because it was so great, I need more, and the other one because it's just I needed more stuff to get into it. So thank you guys so much for watching. We're going to have more stuff coming in very soon. We're going to have a couple movies that I want to review together. I'm still working on watching the last one in that bunch. So either way, stay tuned for more. I'll catch you all next time.